Chapter 1. The Silent Flame of Thought. If the traveler knew that within his mind slumbers a flame capable of setting galaxies ablaze, he wouldn't waste a single dawn fueling the shadows of judgment, the ashes of fear, or the mist of doubt. Because if he understood that the world around him is nothing more than a mirror carved by his own thoughts, he would emerge each morning not only to face the day, but to rewrite his destiny, remembering, like an ancient echo, who he has always been. True metamorphosis of the soul does not occur by changing temples, nor by clothe itself in new sacred words, nor by adopting foreign rites. No. Authentic conversion is an inner shift, an invisible dance between two ways of seeing life. One, woven by fear, limited and worldly. The other, born of connection with the eternal wind, that whisper we call spirit. Changing your mind is what transforms your existence. It's like moving from a dark room to a meadow lit by the midday sun. It's not about memorizing ancient words, but about aligning your consciousness with the source of all wisdom. It's not an intellectual task, but a profound act of communion, the soul embracing its origin. The wise man of the ways, the one many call master, did not come to teach us how to die, but to show us how to think. His true strength was not in transforming water into wine or restoring sight to the blind, but in his perfect attunement to the all-encompassing light. He did not think as men bound to dust think, he thought as eternity thinks. And that is the invitation that, like a burning torch, he extends to us today, to think not from lack, but from wholeness, not from wound, but from fullness. It is impossible to embrace peace while a divided mind remains, like a broken mirror that only reflects fragments. One cannot dance with joy while one's mind clings to scarcity, nor can one heal if one's mind still carries the weight of guilt. No one can live as a child of the infinite if one perceives oneself as an exile. The greatest obstacle for human beings is not error, nor ignorance, nor even darkness. It is the mind that has not remembered its origin. A mind that still believes in separation, built on fear, competition, comparison, and the incessant effort to protect itself from the world. But you, traveling soul, were not created for that. Your purpose is higher. You were born to attune to the mind of the divine fire, the pure consciousness that transcends appearances and rests in the certainty that the sacred dwells within you. This work doesn't seek to tie you down to a new way of living, but to help you let go of the old one. It doesn't aim to chain you to more ideas, but to free you from those that no longer resonate. Here you won't find formulas or dogmas, but an invitation. Leave behind the mind that fears, that doubts, that contradicts itself, and allow a new consciousness to be born within you. Not an alien or imposed consciousness, but your own, the one that has been dormant like a seed waiting for the rain. The consciousness of the sun, what some call Christic consciousness, does not belong to a single person, nor is it limited to ancient history. It is a state of being, a living frequency, a melody that has always vibrated within you. Every word in this book is a stepping stone on the path back. It is not theory, it is practice. It is not religion, it is transformation. It is not theology, it is experience. And if you open your heart to the message, something inside you will begin to change. Thought will no longer be a battlefield, but a blooming garden. Words will cease to be knives and become songs. Emotions will cease to be prisons and become wings. And your soul, like a child awakening from a long sleep, will remember what it feels like to live from another place, not from the ego, but from the sacred fire that dwells within you. That fire has no name. Some call it Christ, others call it presence. But its essence is the same. It is the union between your mind and the divine mind, between the human and the eternal. And that union is the key. The one that opens the doors you thought were closed. Peace, health, freedom, direction, joy. All of these will be given to you, not by merit, but by attunement. Do you want peace? Change your thinking. Do you want health? Tune into the truth. Do you desire purpose? Think as the Spirit thinks. That is your calling. That is what you were born to do. And this work is merely a whisper in your ear, reminding you that you no longer need to think the way you used to think, because the flame of divine thought is within you. It doesn't wait for you in the heavens, or in books, or in temples. It waits for you within, right there where silence meets truth. Close your eyes. Breathe. And on the invisible altar within you, declare, I no longer think with the thoughts of the world. Now I think with the mind of the fire that created me. And in that mind, there is only truth. There is only good. There is only peace. He who created me and I are one. This is my reality, my only reality. Hey, if you've made it this far, it's because this topic really interests you. So remember, the first link in the description has a lot more content on metaphysics and faith that can help you even more. Don't miss it. Chapter 2. The Invisible Threshold of Thought. Don't conform. Don't bend. Don't allow the mold of the world to determine the shape of your soul. For there are thoughts that are born from noise and others that emerge from silence. There is a mind that calculates and another that contemplates. One that fears and another that trusts. True transformation doesn't happen in outward gestures or habits. It happens in the invisible, like the breath that cannot be seen, but gives life. It's not a superficial reform, but an inner birth. It's not about perfecting behavior, but about renewing the way we see the world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, said that wise traveler with a restless soul. And that renewal comes not from logic, but from the heart, because there is a mind made of time, and another made of eternity. One mind that separates, and another that unites. The worldly mind, the carnal mind, is an architect of fear. It designs realities on the foundations of emptiness. It sees threat where there is opportunity, guilt where there is innocence, scarcity where there is plenty. It is quick, impatient, demanding. It irritates, compares, and judges itself. It mistakes noise for truth, control for security, appearance for substance. But it's not an enemy. It's simply a sleeping mind that has forgotten the language of the soul. And like everything that sleeps, it can awaken. Awakening is discernment, not from the intellect, but from presence. Observing without reacting, listening without anticipating, feeling without fear. Because there is also another mind, a mind that does not belong to the world, even though it lives within it, the spiritual mind. It does not deny matter, but it does not submit to its laws. It does not need to isolate itself, because its strength lies in unity. That mind is in no hurry. It looks at the same situation, but sees a different meaning. Where one sees loss, it sees learning. Where one sees crisis, it perceives a door opening. Where one feels like a victim, it recognizes itself as a soul in evolution. It's not self-help. It's spiritual alchemy. It's the science of the soul. Because thoughts aren't neutral, they carry vibration, and that vibration shapes the world. Do you want to know what mind you think from? Ask yourself sacred questions. Is this thought born of fear or trust? Does it limit me or free me? Does it remind me that I am separate or connected to Source? Every time you choose forgiveness over judgment, gratitude over complaint, calmness over urgency, you train your soul to think from the mind of Christ. And that mind doesn't fail. It doesn't contradict itself. It doesn't need to defend itself. Because it's anchored in the beginning, and where there is a beginning, there is peace. It's not about isolating yourself from the world. It's about not surrendering to its way of thinking. You can work, love, create, decide, but do so from a mind that knows that everything is spirit. From the mind that remembers, I am not a body, I am free. From the mind that doesn't need to control, because it trusts. From the mind that has stopped fighting, because it has understood. And when you choose to think with spirit and not with ego, something sacred will happen. Not outside of you, inside of you. The old mind, the carnal mind, will dissipate like fog at dawn. You don't need to be perfect. Just be willing. Say silently, "Holy Spirit, guide my thoughts. I don't want to think like the world. I want to think with you." And if that prayer becomes stronger than fear, more constant than pain, more real than appearance, you will have crossed the invisible threshold. Then you will know, not as you know with your mind, but as you feel with your soul, that God's will is not punishment or renunciation, but true freedom. A peace without dependence, a joy without cause, a life without fear. Chapter 3. The mind that sees with the eyes of God. May there be in you the mind that dwelt in Christ, not as a distant ideal, but as a silent flame waiting to be rekindled. It was not a mind domesticated by morality or perfected by dogma. It was a clear conscience, without fracture, without shadow. A conscience that did not judge because it understood, that did not fear because it knew, that did not defend itself because it dwelt in unity. And what kind of thoughts sustain such a consciousness? Not calculated thoughts, not self-help strategies disguised as light. Christ didn't think the way the world teaches us to think. His mind wasn't reactive, nor did it fluctuate between extremes of desire and guilt, doubt and hope. He responded not from the wound, but from the source. His silence was more eloquent than 1,000 speeches, and his authority came not from imposing himself, but from being aligned. He wasn't a Superman. He was the truth-made mind. And that mind, yes, that same one, is not the privilege of a select few. It's within you, not as a doctrine, but as a dormant seed. It waits only for a pause, a surrender, a yes. The mind that was in Christ saw no separation, and because it saw no separation, it knew no judgment. Only one who believes himself to be a fragment can judge the other as an enemy. Only one who has forgotten his divinity can condemn. But one who remembers the whole sees in every face a sacred story, in every wound a door, in every fall a hidden instruction. There is no condemnation where there is understanding, nor did he live under the yoke of fear, because fear needs an enemy. But he who knows he is spirit, that his substance is light, and his shield is love, has no need to defend himself. His peace does not depend on the weather or the calendar. It is like a house built on rock. No wind can topple it, no noise can destroy it. Fear can knock at the door, but it no longer enters. That mind knew no lack, not because it possessed everything, but because it no longer needed anything to feel fulfilled. The Christ mind doesn't calculate or compare. It doesn't accumulate. It flows. It receives and gives in equal measure. It lives in the continuous present. Everything arrives when it should, and everything goes when it's time. Its wealth is certainty, and she was also obedient. But not to external rules or imposed wills. She was obedient to love, because she discovered that God's will does not oppress, but liberates. It does not demand, but offers. And in wanting what God wants, she found true freedom, one in which the soul no longer struggles between options, because its only choice is peace. You can live from that mind. You don't need monasteries or vows. All you have to do is stop the ego's race and say, "I don't want to think the way the world taught me. I want to see with the eyes of the soul. I want to feel the way Christ feels. I want to act from unity." And that prayer, if it's sincere, is heard. Because it doesn't speak to heaven, but to the dormant seed within you. Then something begins to happen, not like a flash of lightning, but like dawn, slowly, quietly. Your thoughts begin to change one by one. What once hurt you no longer affects you. What once made you fear now makes you pray. What once seemed essential suddenly no longer matters. It is Christ being born within you, not as an idea, but as a gaze, not as an external figure, but as an internal way of inhabiting the world. You no longer live from the old mind that clung and feared, that reacted and demanded. Now it is a different voice that guides, more serene, deeper, more loving. And then, one day, without fanaticism or pretension, you will discover that you no longer live on the same earth, that your soul has shifted its coordinates, that you no longer dwell in the past or in expectations, that what pulsates within you is not the old self, but the awakened spirit. Peace will have taken shape, love will have become thought, and the truth, which is not learned in books but in silence, will finally live through you. Chapter 4. The Kingdom in the Heart. For centuries, human eyes have searched the heavens, the mountains, and the mysteries of death, seeking the place where God dwells. Some imagined golden portals beyond the final veil. Others dreamed of it as a prize reserved for the pure or the saints. But the master of simple steps and all-seeing gaze whispered a truth that few dare to accept. The kingdom of God is not out there, nor high nor far away. The kingdom is within you. It is not a kingdom made of stones or laws. It is not found in monuments or activated by rituals. It is not conquered through merit, nor earned through external works. The kingdom is not achieved. It is recognized. It lies deep within, awaiting the moment when the soul stops its external search and turns inward, like a sunflower that gently turns toward the light that nourishes it. The mind that seeks to understand the kingdom as something external stumbles upon shadows it itself projects. It believes paradise is a distant reward, and forgets that paradise is not a place, but a state of being. A state where there is no separation, where there is no judgment, where love is not negotiable, and peace is not conditional. It is the consciousness of Christ, the silent inheritance that sleeps in every human being like a forgotten seed, waiting to be watered by the truth. The kingdom is not inherited by blood, nor passed down through lineage. It is not the privilege of a few, nor the property of a religion. It is an inextinguishable flame, lit deep within the soul, which reveals itself when the ego surrenders, when the mind ceases its resistance, when the heart stops fighting. It has no streets or temples. There are no thrones, no hymns, no ceremonies. The kingdom is a vibration, a frequency where unity reigns, where love is the only law, and divine will flows like a river without opposition. It is the house of the soul, the eternal home of the spirit. And even if the world ignores it, you can inhabit it now. But to enter it, you don't need to take a vow of silence or isolate yourself from the world. You just need to stop seeking. Because as long as you chase the light with a flashlight lit at midday, you'll miss the sun that already shines above. As long as you pursue salvation in material things, in the validation of others, in the dead structures of form, you'll walk in circles, and your soul will remain exiled from itself. The kingdom doesn't manifest itself with fireworks. It doesn't arrive with booms or visions. It reveals itself when you choose peace over conflict, when you forgive without fully understanding, when you give thanks without reason, when you love even when there are no guarantees. Then the Christ mind, like a sacred dawn, begins to unfold within you, not as an idea, but as a living intelligence that guides, comforts, and transforms you. And you no longer need to control, because you've learned to trust. You no longer judge, because now you understand. You no longer accumulate, because you know you lack nothing. You have discovered that your source is not in the world, but in the spirit. And that spirit does not scarce, does not withhold, does not punish. It only gives, it only is, it only loves. When the soul recognizes the kingdom within, the world ceases to rule it. It is no longer a slave to circumstances. It becomes a witness to the eternal within time. Urgent matters lose their urgency. Dramas lose their hold. Not because everything has become perfect, but because you have rooted your mind in the one reality that cannot be shaken, the presence of God within you. Then you understand what were once words in a holy book, that the kingdom is here, now, and that it isn't built or earned. It's only rediscovered, like someone awakening from a long sleep and recognizing the place where it has always been. And that kingdom becomes your center of gravity. You no longer think out of habit, you think out of inspiration. You no longer decide out of fear, but out of truth. You no longer live to survive, you live to manifest heaven on earth. And you do so without fanaticism, without struggle, without pretense. With the gentleness of one who has understood that everything already exists. Jesus didn't speak in metaphors to embellish the truth. He spoke with divine literality. The kingdom of God is within you. This isn't poetry, it's reality. Guided meditation, the silent kingdom. Be quiet. Close your eyes. Take your time. Inhale deeply and exhale gently. Feel how, as you do this, everything you thought you needed vanishes for a moment. Place both hands on your chest and say deep within yourself, "Here I am. I am not a body. I am not a name. I am the temple of the Spirit, and the kingdom lives in me." Remain for a few minutes in that certainty. Don't wait for signs. Don't look for proof. Rest like one who has returned home. Let that stillness be your guide. Because when the mind rests in truth, the kingdom blossoms, and the Christ mind becomes your only guide, your only law, your only reality. Chapter 5. Where the world is born. Like a river that springs from a secret source beneath the earth, such is the thought that dwells in the heart. Not the fleeting thought that lands in the mind like a bird on a branch and then departs. Not that one. But the thought that descends, deep, until it touches the marrow of the invisible. The one that is rooted in emotion, in the sacred vibration that precedes the word, and there, on the inner altar, begins to shape reality. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he, whispers the ancient proverb. And in that phrase lies a key, not to open external doors, but to enter the innermost temple, where the soul converses with the spirit. There is a subtle threshold, invisible to the eyes, inaudible to the ear of the world. It is not a wooden door or an iron gate. It is not guarded by cherubs or sealed with arcane symbols. That door is felt thought, the one that vibrates with the energy of the soul, the one that is not merely thought, but felt, believed, breathed. On the spiritual level, what is manifested is not what is anxiously desired, nor what is affirmed with a trembling voice. What is manifested is what is truly thought in the heart, what is believed beyond all doubt, what is held in silence when it no longer needs to be repeated, because it has become part of one's being. The universe, like a faithful mirror, responds not to ornate words, but to persistent vibrations. It is not language that creates, but the profound intention that fuels it. There are those who proclaim faith while imagining ruin, affirm abundance while fearing scarcity, speak of peace while silently judging, and without knowing it, they create with their most hidden thoughts, not with their superficial declarations. Thinking from the heart isn't a mental act. It's an alchemy between intellect and emotion, between clarity and surrender. It's when an idea becomes certainty without the need for proof. It's when a truth no longer needs to be demonstrated because it becomes incarnate. It becomes skin. It becomes blood. From this state begins true communion with spirit, not from empty rituals or inherited formulas, but from the sacred alignment between what the soul thinks and what the divine mind already knows. When thought harmonizes with truth, the outer world begins to reflect that melody, not as a reward, but as a living law. For the inner and outer are not two opposing realities, but one, divided by the veil of perception. When we think from the heart, with the burning flame of conscience, invisible portals open. Where the eternal enters the temporal, where the invisible is clothed in matter, where the word becomes flesh. This is how true creation occurs. This is the basis of all metaphysical teaching. It was the silent heart of Jesus' path. He didn't impose new forms. He didn't fight the system. He didn't struggle with symptoms. He thought with God. And since every true thought is a cause, and every cause is mental, the effect was effortless transformation. His mind was a clear sky. His heart knew no conflict between fear and love. It healed without struggle, because there was no contradiction within it. His thought was pure, and in that purity, the world was reordered. You have that same power. You don't need more faith, just more attention. Being vigilant isn't about repressing thoughts, it's about choosing them wisely. Every thought is a decision, and every decision is a key that opens or closes the inner temple. Ask yourself frequently, not as penance, but as meditation. Does this thought bring me closer to the kingdom or push me away? Does this thought reflect the Christ mind or the world mind? Does this thought bring me peace or rob me of clarity? And if the answer isn't worthy of the person you know you are, don't judge yourself. Just change your thinking, not through effort, but through surrender. Declare without drama, I don't accept this idea as my own. I choose to think with the Spirit. I choose to see with the eyes of Christ. And stay there, not with words, but with breath. Let the new idea inhabit you. Don't push it. Don't rush it. Just love it silently until it becomes real. And when it does, when it descends from your mind to your heart, you will have crossed the threshold. You will have entered the place where God thinks with you, where your thought becomes a living creation. It's not by force, it's not by logic, it's by alignment, it's by communion with Source. For as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, and so will his world be. I take this moment to tell you that if what you see resonates with you, in the first link in the description, you will find much more material to continue learning. Chapter 6. The Lighthouse That Does Not Hide. You are light, not by merit, but by origin. You are like the flame that burns without being consumed, like the lighthouse on the cliff top that doesn't ask if the sea needs it. It shines. It simply shines. And in that brilliance, there is no vanity. There is truth. When the Master said, "You are the light of the world," he wasn't doling out praise or offering pious comfort. He was reminding you of what you'd forgotten. He didn't say, "You could become light if you behave." He didn't offer conditions or ask for proof. He said, "You are. You already are. You lack nothing to shine. You only have to remove the blinders of fear, the clouds of confused thinking, the chains of judgment. And then, the light that was always there, without beginning or end, begins to reveal itself." Thinking clearly isn't about thinking faster. It's about thinking without interference. It's about seeing without the lens of the past, without the distortion of wounds, without the cries of the ego. It's about allowing thought to become a river, not a wall, a channel, not a barrier. It's about thinking from the soul, not from the wound. When the mind clears, it doesn't cool down, it illuminates. And that inner clarity, not cleverness or information, is what truly transforms the world. You don't need to have all the answers, but you do need to think from the right source. Not from the wound, but from the healing. Not from your personal history, but from the eternal truth that dwells within you. That truth that doesn't change with the seasons of life. Thinking clearly inevitably leads to acting with purpose. You no longer react. You choose. You no longer move out of fear, nor decide under pressure. Your steps cease to be impulses and become dance. And that dance is guided by a silent music, that of the Spirit. When you act from the center, every gesture is meaningful. A word, a pause, a glance, a silence. Everything can be an altar. Because when you do something from the light, that action becomes a prayer. And no act is small if it comes from an awakened soul. Loving without fear is the ripe fruit of this clarity. Not because love is free from wounds, but because you are no longer defined by them. Those who love from the Christ within don't ask, "Will I be loved in return?" They don't demand contracts. They don't seek to control. They love because they have remembered that to love is to spread the light. That love doesn't fade when it's not returned. It doesn't shrink when it's misunderstood. It endures. Because it's not bound by forms, but by truth. Light doesn't fear darkness. It pierces it. When the Master said that you are light, He wasn't speaking to saints. He was speaking to the fearful, to those who doubted, to those who felt unworthy. He was speaking to those who didn't yet believe themselves worthy of their own brilliance. And he said to them, "Even so, you are light. Not because your days are flawless, but because your being is made of the eternal. And the eternal is not extinguished by passing shadows. God is light without shadow, and you were created in His image." Accepting this isn't arrogance, it's true humility. Because whoever recognizes their light no longer needs to demonstrate it. They simply embody it. And their very presence reminds the world of what it has forgotten. Light doesn't teach with speeches, it teaches with presence. It doesn't need to convince, it simply reveals. And whoever has seen the light in another begins to seek it within themselves. Don't hide. Don't wait to be perfect. Don't demand answers that only come in silence. Close your eyes, return to center, and let your thoughts align with your spirit. From there, say without words, "I am light, not by merit, by origin." And let that light guide you. You don't need to rush. You don't need to be anxious. Only purpose, only openness, only faith, and love. Love without needing to control. Love without contracts. Love without fear. Because whoever loves from the Christ within has already overcome the world, and has become the city on the hill that cannot be hidden, because it was made to shine. Chapter 7. You are the light of the world. It wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't a consolation for broken souls. It wasn't a conditional promise or praise for good behavior. It was a revelation. A truth spoken without embellishment, neither diluted in parables nor attenuated in mystery. You are the light of the world. When Jesus spoke those words, He wasn't speaking to saints, or wise men, or perfect men. He was speaking to the insecure, to the fearful, to the doubting. He was speaking to you in your moments of confusion, in your dark nights, in your days of searching, and yet He called you light. Not because of what you did, not because of what you will accomplish, but because of who you are. Light is not conquered. Light is not earned through merit. Light is not a reward for an obedient soul. Light is your origin. It is your essence when you remember your source. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Likewise, an awakened conscience cannot be hidden. When the soul aligns with the truth, it shines. And its brilliance requires no effort or proclamation, because it illuminates by nature, like the sun, without asking permission, without needing applause. Thinking clearly. It's not thinking faster. It's not thinking with cold logic, or with a mind saturated with reason. It's thinking from the purity of the spirit. It's allowing thought to emerge from silence, not from the noise of the ego. It's seeing without the lenses of the past, without the distortion of judgment, without the fog of fear. True clarity isn't a concept, it's a way of seeing. And those who see clearly act with purpose. Their decisions don't spring from wounds, but from healing. They no longer speak to defend themselves. They no longer act to please. Every step is inspired by an inner force, a silent guide that doesn't impose itself, but never fails. Acting with purpose doesn't mean having a perfect plan. It means being constantly connected to what is real. It means that even a small gesture, a gentle word, a kind look, a silent decision, can be a channel through which the kingdom expresses itself. Nothing is trivial when it is done with presence. And when you think clearly and act with purpose, you begin to love without fear. Because love, when it's true, doesn't ask if it will be reciprocated. It doesn't demand. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't condition. It's not born from scarcity, but from plenitude. Loving without fear doesn't mean loving without being vulnerable, but rather living with the certainty that your essence cannot be wounded. Your worth doesn't depend on another's response. Your light can't be extinguished because it doesn't belong to the world. It belongs to God. And God doesn't create half-lights or half-souls. Therefore, The light that you are doesn't need to defend itself, hide, or wait to be perfect to shine. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't postpone your truth. Don't apologize for being light. The world needs what you already are. The soul that thinks clearly. The being that acts with purpose. The heart that loves without fear. That's the beacon in the midst of the storm. That's the fire that doesn't consume, but guides. That's the city on top of the mountain. And when you love like this, without control, without demands, without fear, you no longer live from lack. You live from expansion. Christ-like love doesn't withhold. It doesn't possess. It doesn't label. Christ-like love gives, because it has remembered that giving is simply extending what one already is. When Jesus said you are the light of the world, he wasn't asking you to be anything other than what you are. He was reminding you of what you had forgotten. He was showing you your reflection in the mirror of your soul, not to make you proud, but to bring you home. Accepting your light isn't arrogance, it's profound humility. Because those who recognize their light don't need to convince anyone, impose, or justify. They simply live from what they are. And by living like this, others remember too. Because light doesn't teach with words, it teaches with presence. Light doesn't argue, it reveals. Light doesn't control, it inspires. Don't hide. Don't wait for the world's permission. Don't suppress your truth for fear of not being understood. Be silent and allow your thoughts to align with the Spirit. From there, think clearly, act with purpose, love without fear. Tell yourself, I am light, not by merit, but by origin. This light is my service. My presence is sufficient. And then, love, without haste, without anxiety, with purpose, with faith, with openness. Love. Love without control. Love without demanding anything in return. Love without fear. Because whoever loves from the Christ within has already overcome the world. And it has become that city on top of the mountain, which cannot be hidden, because it was made to shine. Chapter 8. The Divine Plane, Remembering What Already Is. You are not here to build yourself from nothing, nor to search for an identity that completes you. You are here to remember what you already are. That is the key to all conscious existence, remembering. The world taught you to search, to pursue ideals, to climb other people's mountains in the hope of finding at the top a more worthy, more loved, more luminous version of yourself. But the truth has always been within you, patiently waiting to be rediscovered. What the soul yearns for is not a more perfect future, but a clearer memory. The divine blueprint is not a blank slate to be written on, but an inner map to be remembered. When the Creator dreamed you, He didn't do so with doubt or hesitation. He didn't improvise your design or leave your essence to chance. He created you from His totality, from His abundance, from His perfection. Nothing was missing in your formation. You were woven in an act of absolute love, and within you was imprinted an invisible blueprint, a sacred pattern that contains the entirety of your purpose. That blueprint isn't in the future, nor does it depend on your achievements, nor is it activated by your good deeds. It is within you now, like a sleeping song that only needs to be heard. But listening requires silence. Not external silence, but internal silence. The kind born when the voices of fear, judgment, and comparison are silenced. Those voices that tell you you're not enough yet, that you need more time, more validation, more accomplishments. The ego feeds on that distance between who you are and who you think you should be. And the more you believe in that gap, the further you move away from the truth. But the gap is an illusion. The divine plane is not lost. It's just covered by layers of forgetfulness. Remembering that plane isn't an intellectual act, but an experience of alignment. It's not about understanding it with the mind, but about vibrating it with the soul. It's as if you suddenly recognize yourself in something that was always there, as if life, in its infinite wisdom, whispered in your ear, "You don't need to convert, you just need to remember." In that remembrance, anxiety about the future disappears, and regrets about the past dissolve. Only presence remains. Only truth remains. When you remember who you are, you stop fighting. Not because you give up on your dreams, but because you stop pursuing them out of lack. You no longer do things to be. You do things because you are. You no longer desire to fill emptiness, but to express what overwhelms you. Your actions become a natural extension of your being, not compensation mechanisms. Then you understand that purpose is not a goal to achieve, but a frequency to embody. It is living in coherence with the original plane. That plan is perfect, not because your life is free of challenges, but because each challenge is designed to bring you back to yourself. Every encounter, every loss, every silence, every doubt is part of the divine script that was written with infinite wisdom. Nothing is random. Nothing is meaningless when viewed from the soul. Sometimes, loss is the language of awakening. Sometimes confusion is the door to new clarity. And often, what the ego calls failure is the spirit's way of bringing us back to the essential. There is no path more sacred than the one in which you reconnect with your truth. And that path is not outside of you. It is not traced by the world, nor conditioned by circumstances. It is written within you. And every time you choose from the soul, rather than from fear, every time you honor what you feel, rather than what you hope to please, every time you trust, rather than control, you are walking on that divine plane. You are breathing in its rhythm. But there's something even deeper. This plane doesn't just belong to you, you belong to it too. You are part of a larger design, a cosmic framework, in which your light is not optional, but essential. No one else can take your place. No one else can emit your frequency. You are unique, not out of ego, but out of purpose. And the more true you are to yourself, the more you contribute to the balance of the whole. Universal harmony is achieved not through homogeneity, but through authenticity. Every soul that remembers its plan frees the world from a portion of its darkness. Therefore, living from the divine plane is not about withdrawing from the world, but about transforming it with your presence. It is about living in it without belonging to it. It is about acting without forgetting who you are. It is about loving without possessing. It is about serving without sacrificing. It is about expressing yourself without seeking approval. The world doesn't need more masks. It needs more awakened souls, more beings who remember that their existence is not an accident, but a conscious manifestation of the divine. Spirituality isn't about floating away from reality, but about inhabiting it deeply. The divine plane isn't an escape, it's an immersion. And living in coherence with it doesn't mean renouncing the pleasures of the world, but rather experiencing them with meaning, with gratitude, with fulfillment. There is no contradiction between the spiritual and the material when the soul guides. Because when the spirit directs, what you touch is transformed, what you do expands, what you give multiplies. Remembering who you already are is the most revolutionary act, because it dissolves the need to compare yourself, to compete, to prove yourself. You no longer live from the pressure of constructing an identity, but from the peace of being. And this peace isn't passive, it's profoundly creative. From it, everything you do comes alive. Your ideas, your relationships, your work. Everything becomes an offering. Everything becomes an expression of the divine within you. So if you ever get lost, don't look outside. Close your eyes. Be silent. Return to your breath. Ask humbly, what have I forgotten about myself? And listen. The soul always responds. Sometimes with an intuition, sometimes with a symbol, sometimes with a certainty you can't explain. But it always responds, because the divine plane is never broken. It only waits to be remembered. Chapter 9. The Art of Perfection. It's not a command, it's a revelation. When the words, "Be ye therefore perfect," resonate in the silence of our conscience, they don't speak to us of an unattainable goal or a heavenly demand imposed upon human shoulders. They speak to us of a forgotten nature, a mirror that still holds the intact reflection of who we truly are. Perfection is not the absence of errors. It is the total presence of love. It is the internal coherence between thought, emotion, word, action, and spirit. It is the synchronous dance between the self that dreams and the self that executes. It is returning to the original state, where there is no fracture between the creator and the created, because one knows itself to be an extension of the other. Just as the seed carries within it the complete design of the tree, you carry within you the architecture of the cosmos. You are not asked to be perfect, like someone polishing a marble statue until all its cracks disappear. You are invited to remember that you are already what you seek, that perfection is not what is flawless, but what flows in unity. The butterfly doesn't strive to be beautiful. It simply allows its process to unfold. Perfection, in that sense, isn't a result. It's a faithfulness to the process. To be perfect is to be faithful to the truth of your being, without masks, without fear, without betraying the calling that has been within you from the beginning. When the Master spoke of perfection, he was speaking from the heart of God. He wasn't pointing to a distant peak, but to an awakening, like someone gently touching the shoulder of a sleeper and whispering, "Remember, you are light." But we have confused perfection with judgment. We have believed that being perfect meant never making mistakes, never feeling anger, never doubting, never crying. And so, when we err, we hide. When we fail, we are ashamed. When we suffer, we believe we have failed on the spiritual path. Nothing could be further from the truth. Every tear, carefully observed, becomes alchemy. Every wound, consciously embraced, becomes a door. Every fall, if accepted with humility, reveals the invisible hand that sustains us, even when we think we are alone. The perfection to which we are called is not a destination, but a way of life. It is a compassionate gaze toward oneself. It is the ability to act from love, even when fear tries to rule. It is the wisdom to choose peace when the ego screams for revenge. The perfect soul is not one that never stumbles, but one that stumbles without losing its essence. It is one that, even wounded, continues to sing. One that, even in the darkest night, still remembers that the light has not been extinguished, only temporarily veiled. Perfection isn't achieved, it's revealed. It unfolds like a veil that falls, like a fog that dissipates. It isn't built through effort, it's allowed through surrender. It's the art of trusting that we already are what we want to become. Those who know their true identity don't struggle for validation. They don't need to compete or prove themselves. They know that their being is already sufficient, already divine, already complete. Not out of arrogance, but out of sacred recognition. The Father and I are one. And if the one is perfect, how could you, who were created in his image, not be perfect? It's not a matter of vanity, but of coherence. Not of superiority, but of resonance. But that perfection must be activated, like a seed must be watered. It is activated when you choose the highest thought, when you bless instead of curse, when you sustain peace even in the face of chaos, when you say, "I am light," even as you pass through the shadows. Thus, perfection ceases to be a dogma and becomes a sacred practice, a daily art, a way of inhabiting the world with spiritual integrity. Be perfect then, as if to say, be faithful to your essence. Be consistent with the flame that burns within you. Be a reflection of the love that created you, and you will see how everything around you begins to fall into place, as if the universe were finally recognizing that divinity has awakened in human form. Guided meditation, the seed of perfection. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Imagine that there is a golden seed inside you. It doesn't need to be created. It's already there, always. Visualize it beating in the center of your chest, like a silent heart. That seed is your original perfection. It needs no approval, no comparison. It is your truth before the masks, your innocence before the guilt. Every time you breathe, the seed expands. With each inhalation, you remember that you are already enough. With each exhalation, you release the illusion of not deserving. Repeat softly, I am the living image of the divine. I am perfect in my essence. Every thought, emotion, and action of mine reflects the truth of who I am. Stay there, breathing, acknowledging. Feel the peace of knowing you don't have to become what you already are. Just remember it. Just allow it. And when you return, do so with the certainty that you have awakened a piece of heaven within you. Because perfection is not that which does not fall, but that which rises with love. Chapter 10. The Mirror of the One. Everything you see is a reflection, and everything that disturbs or inspires you outside is actually a part of you still seeking to be understood. Life doesn't show you the world as it is, but as you are. This is one of the oldest secrets of the soul. Everything around you is a mirror, not to judge you, but to reveal you. The unity of all things is not a philosophical theory or a spiritual consolation. It is the inner structure of the universe. There is no separation between you and what you experience. You are not in the world is in you. And so, every encounter, every situation, every word spoken or received is a conversation with yourself in another face, in another form, at another moment. The art of recognizing yourself in everything that happens is the beginning of true freedom. You no longer react with complaint or resistance. You observe, you accept, you understand. If someone hurts you, you ask yourself, what part of me still needs to heal so that this wound can touch me? If someone inspires you, you stop and recognize, what dormant part of me is awakening to see that light? Nothing is accidental. Nothing is external. Consciousness projects, and matter obeys. Therefore, the great task is not to transform what is outside, but what is within. To change judgment into understanding, guilt into responsibility, reaction into observation. The wise men of all times have taught it in different ways, but with the same underlying principle. There is no other. The other is you. You are you at another level of consciousness, in another role, in another chapter of the same journey. And when you manage to see that without rejection, the miracle begins. The world begins to soften. Because you no longer confront it, you acknowledge it. There comes a time on the path when the soul tires of dividing, of choosing sides, of defending identities, of labeling everything as good or bad. At that point, true love is born, the kind that doesn't depend on conditions or respond to expectations. The kind of love that simply is, because it has understood that there is no real separation between the loved one and the one who loves. Seeing the one in all is an act of inner vision. It's not about denying differences, but about transcending them. Seeing that behind the friendly face or the hostile gesture, there is a spark that comes from the same fire from which you come. That even in the densest shadow there is an echo of the original light. And so, the world is transformed, not because it has changed, but because you have changed your perspective. Where there were once enemies, now there are messengers. Where there were once obstacles, now there are mirrors. Where there was once chaos, now there are possibilities for integration. This is the great secret of those who awaken. They no longer fight reality. They read it. They listen to it. They decode it like a living language, a constant conversation between the visible and the invisible. And in that silent dialogue, every experience becomes a lesson, not to be corrected, but to be revealed. The mirror of the one doesn't lie, but it doesn't punish either. It doesn't judge you, it just reflects you. And when you understand this, the need to hide disappears. You no longer fear the world seeing your flaws, because you've stopped wearing masks. You no longer fear others rejecting you, because you've accepted yourself. Everything you love in another is a reflection of your truth. Everything you reject in another is a reflection of your resistance. Ultimately, loving or rejecting doesn't change what is. It changes your interpretation of it. And that's where the power lies. not in controlling what happens, but in how you choose to view it. The soul matures when it learns to bless even what it doesn't understand, when it stops demanding explanations and begins to walk with confidence, when it transforms every experience, even the most painful, into a stepping stone toward integration. Nothing is separate from you, and the more you accept this truth, the more you become free. Because you no longer have to fix the world, only polish your inner self. As you do so, your frequency changes, and the reflection the universe sends back to you also transforms. Imagine for a moment that you're standing in front of a calm lake. Every thought you have is a stone you throw onto its surface. The ripples that return aren't punishment or reward, they're a response. They're the echo of your internal state manifested externally. Do you want more peace in your life? Sow peace in your thoughts. Do you desire more love in your relationships? Cultivate love for yourself. Do you long for clarity in your decisions? Stop fighting the fog and start turning on the light from within. Everything begins with you, and everything ends with you. The entire universe is a projection of the soul that observes it. Change your perception, and the universe changes with you. The mirror of the one doesn't disappear, but its reflection changes. You no longer see enemies. You see parts of yourself crying out for attention. You no longer see chaos. You see movement toward order. You no longer see lack. You see the opportunity to choose a new frequency. Unity is not an idea. It's an experience. And that experience only comes when you stop fighting to be right, to assert yourself, to defend your story. Then, what once seemed separate becomes one. What once hurt heals, and what once seemed impossible becomes part of the path. You didn't come into the world to fix it. You came to remember that everything is connected, to live with such internal coherence that your mere presence orders the environment, to look with such compassion that even fear feels safe by your side, to speak with such truth that your voice heals without needing to shout. When you understand there is no other, all war ends. Because there is no one left to fight. Only parts of you remain, waiting to be acknowledged, loved, and reintegrated. That's the true purpose of the mirror, not to show you your flaws, but to restore you to your wholeness. Chapter 11. The Language of the Invisible. Everything real begins in the invisible. Before the world takes form, it already exists in vibration. Before sound is heard, it already resonates in silence. Before desire manifests, it has already been born as a subtle intention deep within the soul. The most common mistake is to believe that what is visible comes first, and that what is invisible is a consequence, an illusion, or a mere dream. But the opposite is true. What is visible is merely a shadow projected by a deeper light. It is the echo of a song sung on a frequency that not everyone can hear. The universe doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symbols, in vibrations, in synchronicities. Its language is neither linear nor logical, but intuitive, circular, revealing. Therefore, those who learn to hear it no longer need life to shout at them. A sign, a gesture, a small spark of consciousness is enough to understand the message. He who masters the art of listening to the invisible lives in a state of constant communion. Nothing happens to him by chance, because everything is a response. Sometimes gentle, sometimes forceful, but always exact. Reality becomes a letter written in transparent ink, revealed only in the light of an awakened soul. At this point in the journey, it's no longer enough to repeat what you want. You have to vibrate it. Words without energy are like dry leaves in the wind, but a single affirmation charged with certainty can move mountains, open paths, and alter matter. Because faith is not a passive belief, it's a creative act. When you say, "I am," you're not describing yourself. You're creating. You're projecting a vibration into the quantum field that, without judgment and without delay, will begin to take shape. It doesn't matter whether you say it with your mouth or with your thoughts. What matters is the frequency that accompanies it. the inner truth that supports it. The universe listens with the heart, not the ears, and it responds not to what you say, but to what you emit. You can ask for abundance with words, but if you emit fear, scarcity, or doubt, that's what you'll receive. Because the field responds with impeccable neutrality to your deepest frequency, not to your speech. So, the real work is internal. It's aligning thought, word, emotion, action, and faith into a single melody. It's speaking as one who has already received. It's giving thanks before having. It's feeling unconditionally deserving. It's vibrating in the certainty that it's already been done, even when everything seems otherwise. The language of the invisible is subtle, but not inaccessible. It's like an underground current that's always been there, waiting for you to stop looking at the surface. When you quiet your mind, when you sharpen your attention, you begin to perceive it. A feeling, a dream that persists, a phrase that repeats itself, a coincidence that repeats itself so much that it no longer seems like a coincidence. Then you understand. Life is not an accident, it's a conversation. You are not alone, you never were. The universe speaks to you every moment, not with words, but with reflections, with symbols, with energy. And when you manage to decode that language, you are no longer afraid. Because you know you are guided. Because you feel like you are part of something bigger. There are those who live on the surface, and everything seems chaotic, unfair, random. But those who learn to read the invisible discover that there is a secret order in everything that happens, that even mistakes have a purpose, that even silences contain answers, that even losses open doors. This is the moment you stop asking and start declaring. You stop pleading and start trusting. Because you've understood that the universe doesn't respond to needs, but to vibrations. And then, instead of saying, "I hope it comes," you say, "I already am." And something in you changes. And so does the world around you. The quantum field isn't out there, it's within you. It's part of your own consciousness. When you elevate your internal state, you're modulating that invisible matrix where everything originates. You're fine-tuning your antenna to tune into another reality, one in which you already are, already have, already live what you longed for. This is where faith ceases to be an act of hope and becomes an act of certainty. Not because you have external guarantees, but because something inside you has clicked. Because you no longer need evidence to believe, you believe, and that's why you believe. The language of the invisible also demands humility, because you won't always know the how or the when. But if you trust in the what and the why, life will take care of the details. You don't need to control, just align. You don't need to force, just flow with coherence. And so, the world begins to respond differently. Doors open effortlessly. The right people appear. The signs intensify. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer seek, you remember. You no longer beg for love, because you vibrate in love. And the universe, like a faithful mirror, reflects it back. Always remember this. No word is empty when it's charged with pure intention. No affirmation is sterile when it comes from the soul. No prayer goes unanswered when it's spoken from the heart in harmony with the all. The language of the invisible is the original language, the one spoken by wise men without pronouncing it, the one understood by animals, plants, and stars, the one that vibrates in the silence between two glances, in the sigh before the yes, in the calm that comes when one surrenders without fear. Mastering that language isn't a talent, it's a choice. It requires presence, authenticity, and listening. But once you speak it, nothing is ever the same. Because you see the world as it is. A symphony of signs designed to remind you of who you are and what you came here to manifest. And in that moment, magic ceases to be a mystery and becomes a natural way of life. Chapter 12. The Alchemy of the Everyday. Most people look for miracles like fireworks, grand, obvious, dramatic. But true alchemy rarely makes a sound. It happens in the everyday, in the simple, in the seemingly insignificant. Where no one looks, where the distracted mind overlooks, the awakened soul finds gold. We have been educated to expect great signs, as if divinity had to announce itself with trumpets. But the language of the Spirit rarely shouts. Its manifestations are whispers amidst the hustle and bustle, hidden sparks in the routine, hidden gems in the shadows of the ordinary. It's easy to feel grateful for an obvious achievement or blessing. But the inner alchemist learns to be grateful before it arrives, and even when nothing seems to change. Because they know that the invisible always works silently, weaving miracles that only the patient heart can recognize. Every day is an opportunity for transmutation. You don't need a cave in the Himalayas or a ruined temple. You need presence. You need intention. You need love. A gesture of kindness, a word of encouragement, an act of compassion can alter the vibration of an entire environment. And that is a sacred form of alchemy. Spiritual alchemy doesn't transform metals, but rather gazes. It transforms fear into understanding, wounds into wisdom, loss into rebirth. It doesn't change matter at a whim, but rather reveals the eternal within the ephemeral. It is the art of discovering the divine in the human, the eternal in the fleeting. The ego seeks the extraordinary to feel special. The soul, on the other hand, seeks the real to feel at home. It doesn't need applause or feats. It only desires to integrate into the sacred flow of existence. Because it knows that every breath is an act of creation, and every thought is a seed planted in the field of the invisible. The true teacher is not the one who performs miracles, but the one who sees miracles in everything. The one who understands that lighting a candle can be an act of communion, that looking into someone's eyes can be a prayer, that cooking with love can be medicine, that walking barefoot on the earth is a way of remembering who you are. The everyday is not banal when done with awareness. In the hands of an awakened soul, even the ordinary becomes a portal. Washing dishes can be an act of purification. Making the bed can be a ceremony of inner order. Watering a plant can be a conversation with life. The secret lies in attention, in how you inhabit the moment, in how you infuse presence into what you do. Attention is the alchemist's magic wand. Where you point it, their power awakens. What you touch with awareness, you sanctify. What you look at with love, flourishes. Nothing is too small to contain the sacred. A bowl of rice, a tender word, a pause in the middle of the day to breathe. Everything can become an altar if your soul is present. The problem isn't routine, it's the absence of spirit with which we sometimes inhabit it. Everyday alchemy is a silent rebellion against apathy. It is the affirmation that life, in all its forms, deserves to be celebrated. It is a radical act of transformation, taking the gray and coloring it with intention, taking the automatic and making it conscious, taking the expected and opening up to the miracle. Those who practice this alchemy know that it's not about adding anything, but about removing the veils. The miracle is already there, beating beneath the habitual, but we cover it up with haste, with complaints, with repetitive thoughts. All we have to do is look again, with fresh eyes, and everything changes. It's not about faking joy, but about inhabiting life from a place of gratitude. Not about denying pain, but about allowing it to be part of the sacred process. Because even suffering, when experienced with awareness, becomes alchemy. What was once a burden is transformed into understanding. What was painful is now a guide. Living from this alchemy is an act of faith without show. It's believing that each day brings a gift, even if it doesn't always come wrapped in what you expected. It's walking with your feet on the ground and your heart in the mystery. It's remembering that you don't need to get anywhere to be at the center. You're already here. When you begin to live like this, the simple is enough. You no longer seek proof, because life itself becomes evidence. A profound conversation, the smell of freshly baked bread, a child's laughter, a falling leaf. Everything becomes a lesson, a sign, a confirmation. Then, you stop running. You stop looking outside. Because you realize that paradise is not far away or in the future. It is in reality, when reality is viewed with soul. And here the most powerful magic happens. The world ceases to be a hostile place. You no longer see enemies, but mirrors. There are no longer tasks, but offerings. There is no longer routine, but a sacred rhythm. And you are no longer a lost character, but an awakened creator, a silent alchemist, a weaver of miracles in the everyday. This is how you discover that life doesn't need to change to be sacred. You just need to change the way you look at it. A quick heads up. If you'd like to explore metaphysics and faith further, you'll find the first link in the description. Let's keep going. Chapter 13. The Seed That Remembers the Tree. Everything created carries within itself the memory of its origin. The complete design of the tree resides within each seed, even if it has not yet sprouted. It doesn't need to understand how it will grow. It only needs to surrender to the process, to the mystery, to the invisible law that guides it from within. So too is the human soul, a sacred seed that remembers infinity, even if the mind doesn't understand its form. From our first breath, we carry within us the complete map of what we can become. But that memory lies dormant beneath layers of fear, doubt, and inherited conditioning. Not because it has been lost, but because it awaits rediscovering. Spiritual awakening is not an external acquisition. It is not a prize, nor an achievement, nor a conquest. It is a remembrance. It is the art of stripping away what we are not, so that what we always were may emerge. It is stopping looking outward for meaning and turning our gaze inward, where the eternal has never stopped speaking. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, designed us whole. We lack nothing. What we call lack is often a disconnection from inner truth. We think we need more knowledge, more experiences, more validation. But in reality, what we need is silence, presence, and a willingness to listen to the ancient whisper that lives within us. There, deep in the heart, there is a voice that doesn't shout, but insists. A voice that doesn't reason, but knows. It is the voice of the soul, the one that doesn't doubt your purpose, the one that doesn't forget that you are part of the whole, the one that, like the seed, holds the perfect design of the tree you have come to be. For a seed to germinate, it needs darkness, fertile soil, moisture, and a sacred time of not knowing. This is also the case in life. Periods of confusion, waiting, and uncertainty are not mistakes along the way. They are part of the rhythm. They are incubation. They are the space where roots take root before the sprout emerges. But the ego fears that space. It wants immediate light, fruits without roots, certainties without faith. It grows impatient with silence and wants answers that can be understood, measured, controlled. However, the greatest truth is not understood with the mind. It is recognized with the soul. And the soul only speaks in the language of the present. Therefore, remembering who you are isn't an exercise in thought. It's an act of presence. It's allowing yourself to inhabit this moment without wanting to change it, knowing that everything that happens, even what you don't understand, is part of the blossoming that is already underway. It's trusting the design you carry within, even if you don't yet see it manifested. When you begin to live from that deep trust, something changes. You no longer feel the urge to demonstrate, nor the anxiety to control. You begin to walk gently, with reverence, knowing that every step you take is supported by a greater intelligence. You stop pushing life and begin to dance with it. And then you discover that life was never against you. That every challenge, every fall, every dark night were actually nutrients for your growth. That the seasons of the soul are similar to those of the earth. There are necessary winters, luminous summers, autumns of letting go, and springs of rebirth. That nothing is permanent, but everything is sacred. The tree doesn't fear winter because it knows it's part of the cycle. Likewise, the soul shouldn't fear uncertainty because that's where the roots are strengthened. You can't flourish if you haven't taken root. You can't rise if you haven't first sunk into the truth of who you are. Every time you choose silence over noise, you remember. Every time you choose truth over appearances, you remember. Every time you choose compassion over judgment, you remember. And in that remembering, the seed begins to sprout, without haste, without fear, without need for approval. The soul doesn't need the world to understand it. It only needs you not to betray it, to listen to it, to follow it, even if there are no maps, to trust it, even if you can't see the horizon, because the soul knows where it's going, even if you don't. It carries the memory of the tree. It only waits for you to give it space to grow. And growing, on this path, doesn't mean becoming more important. It means becoming more authentic, lighter, more at peace. It means letting go of pretense, letting go of the mask of knowing, of controlling, of having answers. It means surrendering to the wisdom of not knowing, which is not ignorance, but humility. Sometimes remembering who you are hurts, because it means seeing everything you're not, and that can be scary. But there's no greater freedom than shedding the false. There's no greater joy than rediscovering your essence. There's no greater power than walking from the center. The seed doesn't need to struggle to become a tree. It only needs favorable conditions: fertile soil, constant water, sufficient light, and time. You don't need to struggle either. You just need to create the conditions: clear thoughts, peaceful emotions, aligned words, and sincere actions. The rest happens on its own. Life doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be real, to be true to your inner truth, to not silence the voice of your soul for fear of judgment, to not postpone your blossoming waiting for the approval of others, to not change your sacred design to fit another's mold. Remember, a seed doesn't become a tree to please the forest. It becomes a tree because that's its nature. You're not here to fit in either. You're here to expand, to blossom, to remember. And if you ever forget, because we all forget sometimes, just come back to the center. Close your eyes, breathe, listen. Because even if you've lost your way, the seed is still there, alive, untouched, waiting. Chapter 14. The Echo of Origin. There is a subtle vibration that precedes all form. Before light manifests, before a word is spoken, before even a thought appears, there is a frequency, a silent resonance that cannot be perceived by the ears, but that the soul recognizes with a familiarity that transcends time. It is the echo of the origin, the eternal murmur of that which created us. It's not a sound that comes from outside. It's a whisper that emerges from within, like a song that was always there, but that we had stopped hearing. Not because it has stopped playing, but because we have become deaf to the invisible. We have lost ourselves in the distraction of forms, in the hubbub of opinions, in the din of other people's desires. But the echo is still there, patient, awaiting the moment when the soul awakens and remembers. Everything in creation vibrates. The entire universe is a dance of frequencies, a symphony of energies in motion. The stars sing in their language of light. The mountains emit their deep, steady note. Rivers flow with the melody of change. Even silence vibrates. Even stillness contains rhythm. And you, as part of this whole, also vibrate. What you think, what you feel, what you say, what you do. Everything emits a frequency, and that frequency not only creates your reality, but also attunes you to other similar realities. You don't attract what you desire, you attract what you vibrate. Don't create with empty words, but with the intention that sustains them, with the emotion that backs them, with the coherence that embodies them. Therefore, the first act of conscious creation is internal harmonization. It's learning to silence the noise to hear the original echo. It's aligning with the pure note of your being, with the frequency the universe placed within you as a divine signature. When you vibrate within it, you don't need to force anything. Everything falls into place, everything flows, everything arrives. Not because you pursue it, but because you allow it. But this return to origins doesn't occur from the logical mind. It's not an intellectual exercise, nor an accumulation of spiritual data. It's a process of internal tuning, as if you were an instrument that needs to be brought back into tune with the great orchestra of existence. And to do that, it's sometimes necessary to unlearn. Unlearn what you were told you should be. Unlearn inherited fears. Unlearn the beliefs that distort your natural frequency. Because every belief that denies your greatness, every thought that separates you from love, every emotion that denies your power, lowers your vibration. And when you vibrate low, you forget who you are. You forget that you are light inhabiting a body, that you are spirit playing at being human, that you are consciousness exploring its own creation. You forget that you are not here by accident, nor by punishment, nor by chance. You are here because you chose to be, because in the echo of origin, your soul said, yes. It said yes to the challenge, yes to learning, yes to the possibility of remembering the whole from the experience of separation. And that yes continues to vibrate within you, even if you don't hear it. It's the sacred pulse that beats in every cell, the call that never ceases, the compass that guides you when everything else falls apart. You can ignore it, you can distract yourself, you can even resist it, but you can't turn it off. Because it's stronger than fear, deeper than wounds, more eternal than any circumstance. When you begin to remember that echo, you discover that you are not alone. That life is not a monologue, but a constant dialogue with the invisible. That there are forces, presences, intelligences that accompany you. That the universe conspires, yes, but only to the extent that you align yourself with its music. You can't demand harmony from the universe if you're out of tune. You can't ask for answers if you're unwilling to listen. You can't manifest abundance from lack, love from disconnection, or peace from resistance. Like attracts like, and you attract what resonates with you. Therefore, true spiritual work is not in doing more, but in being more. Not in rushing outward, but in anchoring yourself inward. Not in accumulating techniques, but in embodying the truth. And the truth is simple. Everything you seek is already within you. You don't need to add anything. You just need to remember. Remember that you are vibration, that you are frequency, that you are a unique note in the symphony of the cosmos, that your voice matters, that your presence transforms, that your inner alignment is the most powerful gift you can offer the world. Because when you vibrate in your truth, others remember theirs. Just as a Tibetan singing bowl can tune another just by being near it, you too can raise the frequency of a space with your mere presence. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to defend your path. You just need to inhabit it with authenticity. Be coherent. Be clear. Be true. And when you live like this, life responds. Doors open. The right people arrive. Miracles, which are nothing other than the logic of the soul, become commonplace. Not because you're forcing reality, but because you're finally vibrating in tune with it. Every profound change is a change in frequency. Changing your life doesn't begin with changing what's on the outside, but with transforming what you emit, with healing your vibration, with honing your pitch, with remembering the music you've always been. And in that remembering, the echo of the origin becomes a song. A song that is not of this world, but that can be heard in every act of love, in every gesture of compassion, in every conscious step. A song that, if you follow it, guides you back home. Because the path doesn't lead anywhere. It leads to yourself, to your center, to the truth that has always been there, waiting for you to return. And when you arrive, you don't find answers, but silence. A full silence. A silence that sings. A silence that vibrates with the certainty that you, in your essence, are already everything you are seeking. Chapter 15. The Soul Pact. In the deepest recesses of the spirit, where time has no measure and space is merely a symbol, the soul celebrates a sacred pact. It is not an agreement signed with words or sealed with visible gestures, but a vibratory alliance, a commitment between eternity and form, between the divine that we are and the human that we embody. That pact wasn't forced. There was no imposition. It was a free, luminous, bold choice. Before being born, the soul contemplated the entire tapestry. It saw the faces it would encounter, the trials it would endure, the loves that would awaken it, and the wounds that would make it grow. It saw the emptiness, the triumphs, the doubts, and the silences. And yet, it said yes. Not out of naivety, but out of purpose. Because the soul doesn't fear pain as the mind does. It isn't afraid of error, loss, or chaos. The soul knows that every shadow is a teacher, and that every step, even the most uncertain, leads to truth. The soul doesn't seek security, it seeks expansion. And through that pact, it chose a life as an instrument of its own revelation. That pact predates names, history, and the titles we collect to define ourselves. It's older than childhood and more real than any story you tell about yourself. It's the invisible thread that connects every experience to the highest purpose. Nothing is random. Nothing is punishment. Nothing is a mistake. What you call obstacles are necessary chapters. What you judge as loss is often redirection. What hurts you today will one day become a seed. And that's the beauty of the pact. It doesn't promise ease, but it does promise purpose. It doesn't guarantee comfort, but it does guarantee meaning. Every encounter in your life is part of that agreement. The people you loved and those who hurt you. The places that welcomed you and those that cast you out. The decisions you celebrated and those you regretted. Everything is woven into a larger design, an invisible architecture the soul laid out to remind itself through what it has experienced. And yet, forgetting is part of the game. By incarnating, consciousness pierces the veil of forgetting, plunges into density, and pretends not to know. Not out of punishment, but out of love. Because only from amnesia can true freedom emerge. Only when you forget that you are light can you choose to shine again. And in that act of choosing, you become a creator. The pact doesn't demand perfection, but rather presence. It doesn't ask you to never stumble, but rather that each stumble awaken you. It's not about fulfilling an external mission, but about being faithful to the original vibration that dwells within you. That vibration that isn't altered by failure or exalted by applause. It's a constant pulse, a gentle voice that guides you from within, if you learn to listen. But listening to the soul requires silence. Not necessarily external, but internal. A silence that isn't the absence of noise, but rather the absence of judgment. It's the space where you stop resisting what is, where you let go of the need to control, where you surrender to what life brings, trusting that everything that comes for you and not against you. In that silence, you begin to distinguish what is true from what is borrowed. You discover which desires are born from the soul and which are a reflection of fear. Which goals expand you and which merely seek validation. Which paths ignite your spirit and which merely feed the mask. And when you act from that clarity, the pact is activated. Because the pact is not an immutable condemnation. It is dynamic, alive, flexible. It adapts to your choices, your rhythms, your awakenings. But it always invites you to more authenticity, to more coherence, to more light. It reminds you that you didn't come just to survive or meet the expectations of others. You came to embody a frequency, to leave a vibrational imprint on the world, to transform your life into a channel of the sacred. This doesn't mean abandoning the everyday, but rather inhabiting it with awareness. It doesn't mean fleeing the world, but rather seeing it with new eyes. Because when you live in harmony with the soul's pact, every gesture becomes a prayer, every word, a decree, every step, an affirmation of your truth. And of course, there will be moments of doubt, days when the purpose seems distant and the soul feels silent. But even in those silences, the pact sustains. Even if you don't see it, there's a greater plan at work. Even if you don't understand it, every piece fits together. Even if it hurts, it all matters. Faith, then, isn't believing without proof, but trusting in the midst of the fog. It's remembering that the soul doesn't err, even when the personality stumbles. It's holding on to the invisible thread, even when everything around you seems chaotic. Because that thread is real. It's your origin and your destiny. It's the promise you made to yourself before you forgot. And every time you choose love over fear, authenticity over masks, silence over noise, you honor that pact. And something subtle happens. Life begins to respond to you in a new language. The signs become clearer. The synchronicities become more frequent. The encounters become more meaningful. Everything makes sense. Not because the outside has changed, but because you have remembered. Reminded that you are not lost, that you are not alone, that you are not broken. You are just on a journey. And that journey doesn't lead to a place, but to a vibration. The vibration of who you truly are, beyond the layers, the stories, and the roles. When you live from that place, you no longer need to convince anyone, or prove anything, or defend your worth. Your very presence emits a frequency that awakens, uplifts, and transforms. Not from effort, but from truth. And then, the soul pact ceases to be a hidden mystery and becomes a daily dance. A dance with the invisible, with the eternal, with what you always were. A dance not danced with the feet, but with the heart. Chapter 16. The Language of the Invisible. There is a language that is neither spoken with the tongue nor heard with the ears. A language older than words, purer than ideas, and more accurate than any logic. It is the language of the invisible, and its alphabet is written in symbols, signs, silences, and vibrations. Only the soul understands it, because only the soul remembers. From the moment we open our eyes in this world, we are taught to trust the obvious. What can be measured, touched, repeated. We learn to distrust what has no form, to discard the intangible, to ridicule what cannot be proven. But there is a truth that whispers beneath all evidence. Reality does not begin with the visible. The visible is merely the echo of what has already been decreed in the invisible. Thoughts, emotions, intentions. Each of them emits a vibration, a frequency that interacts with the matrix of creation. And this matrix, which neither judges nor reason, responds with absolute fidelity. It is a sacred mirror that reflects not what you desire, but what you are. Therefore, it is not about asking from a place of lack, but about vibrating from a place of fullness. Not about forcing, but about tuning in. This language has no conjugations, but it does have coherence. It is not articulated with the mouth, but with consciousness. Every sustained thought is a word spoken in the quantum field. Every persistent emotion is a silent command that expands toward what we call reality. And so, without realizing it, we are constantly speaking to the universe. The question is, are we aware of what we are saying? You speak when you think. You speak when you feel. You speak when you believe. Even when you remain silent, you are speaking. Because the field around you responds not to your ornate words, but to your vibrational truth. If you say, "I trust," but vibrate in fear, the field hears fear. If you affirm, "I am abundant," but feel unworthy, the field echoes the unworthiness. You cannot deceive the language of the invisible, because it responds not to masks, but to essence. And herein lies the most overlooked power of human beings, their ability to create from the subtle. We are constant transmitters, living magnets, transmitters of frequencies. What we hold within is translated on the outside, not as punishment, but as revelation. External life is nothing more than the projected surface of the soul. Every circumstance is a reflection, every encounter a message, every difficulty an opportunity to better translate what we don't yet understand about ourselves. The language of the invisible doesn't speak in logical certainties, but in signs. Sometimes it appears as synchronicity, A word heard in passing, a repeated number, a recurring dream, a sensation that can't be explained. It's the soul reminding you of what the mind has forgotten. But to hear that language, you need inner stillness. Not so much external silence, but an inner willingness to let go of the noise of the familiar. And when you begin to listen, you realize that you were never alone, that life always spoke to you, that the universe has never been indifferent. You simply weren't tuned to the right channel. Like a radio that only emits static until you turn the dial and find the exact frequency, so too must your consciousness adjust to capture the language of the invisible. This language doesn't demand blind faith, but rather awakened attention. It asks you to become an observer, not of others, but of yourself. To read your day as if it were a sacred text. To understand that what happens to you today is a response to what you thought, felt, or ignored yesterday. Because everything is intertwined in an invisible web of cause and effect, where the soul is both author and spectator. And yes, this language also knows the nuances of pain. Because sometimes the soul needs to be awakened with a blow, not out of cruelty, but because gentleness is no longer enough. The soul doesn't seek comfort, it seeks awakening. And if necessary, it will use chaos to open the doors that habit has closed. Even darkness has its grammar, its teaching. Every crisis is a prayer spoken by the invisible, reminding you that you can choose differently. The body itself is a channel for that language. Its symptoms are not errors, but messages. Every ailment, every fatigue, every acceleration is a phrase written in a dialect that medicine doesn't yet fully understand. It is the soul speaking through the body when it can no longer speak to you through dreams, intuitions, or hunches. This language also lives in beauty, in art, in music, in nature, in the song of a bird that arrives just when you're in doubt, in a song that appears when you need it most, in a landscape that makes you cry without knowing why. None of this is chance. It's the language of the invisible knocking at the door of your soul to remind you that you're on your way, that you're home, that you haven't lost your way, even if your mind thinks you have. True awakening is not an accumulation of knowledge, but an opening to this language. Awakening is about ceasing to live as a victim of the external and beginning to interpret the external as an echo of the internal. It is about understanding that if something repeats itself, it is not bad luck, but a message that has not been understood. It is about seeing each experience as part of a larger dialogue, a conversation between you and the mystery within. Learning this language requires humility, patience, and presence. Humility to accept that not everything can be understood through reason. Patience to decipher what is not yet formed. Presence to inhabit the now, where every message is revealed, because the language of the invisible is not read in haste, nor understood with anxiety. It is deciphered with an open soul and a burning heart. When you achieve that openness, life ceases to be a sequence of random events. It becomes a cosmic poem, a precise dance, a symphony orchestrated by a higher intelligence that neither punishes nor rewards, but guides, corrects, and loves. Not from control, but from resonance. And then, you no longer need to ask so many questions, because you understand that the answer is in the air, in the gesture, in the body, in time. You understand that the invisible has always spoken, and that now you too know how to speak back. Not with words, but with vibration. Not with anxiety, but with presence. Not with fear, but with trust. Because in the end, everything that matters is invisible to the eyes, but the soul always remembers it. Chapter 17. The Dance of the Void. There are moments when life seems to stop, as if everything we knew suddenly vanished into thin air, leaving a feeling of incompleteness. The noise of the world seems to fade away, and we're left staring into the abyss of what we don't understand. But is what we see really a void? Is what we feel really an absence? The void is not nothingness, nor the absence of something, but the space that precedes creation. The void is the antechamber of what is to come. It is the space of infinite possibilities, where everything that exists has not yet taken form, and in its silence dwells the pure potential of manifestation. The void is not an enemy, nor something to be feared. The void is the beginning of everything. It is the canvas where life, even without being, begins to dance. In the dance of emptiness, there are no predefined movements, no steps to follow. Everything moves to the beat of the energy that inhabits it. It is a dance without choreography, without rules. A dance that does not depend on time or space. The void is not motionless, but vibrant, throbbing with potential. It is not a place of inaction, but of internal movement, where the invisible and the visible intertwine in a cosmic whisper. We live in a world that constantly tries to fill the void. We fight against silence, against stillness, against pause, because we believe everything must have a form, a structure, an immediate purpose. But emptiness demands no purpose, no explanation. It only demands being. Emptiness is creation in its purest form, in its most original form. Every thought that arises in our mind is a response to emptiness. Every emotion born in the heart is a manifestation of that primordial nothingness that is everything at the same time. Emptiness is the space where our reality is formed. Every time we feel lost, confused, empty, we are being invited to enter that sacred space, where everything begins and everything ends. In emptiness, the answer is not found in what we do, but in who we are. And what are we? We are those who dance with the void, those who are one with it. The human being is not a separate figure, but an extension of that cosmic void. The dance of the void is not a solitary dance. It is a joint dance between the soul and the universe, between individual consciousness and universal consciousness. And in this dance, it doesn't matter how uncertain the step or how ephemeral the rhythm. What matters is that we are being, that we are here, that we are alive in the void. Many fear emptiness because they see it as a threat. They fear loneliness, abandonment, and lack of purpose. But emptiness is not a place of despair. It is a fertile ground where all possibilities are equally valid. When we face emptiness, we face the greatest opportunity, the possibility of creating from the very center of our being, unrestricted by the known, unbound by the pre-existing. Emptiness is the origin, the primordial essence, the place of limitless creation. It's true that we live in a world that values action, effort, struggle. We've been taught to fear rest, pause, stillness. But true power is not found in constant action, but in the wisdom of repose. It's not about fleeing emptiness, but entering it, embracing it, dancing with it. Because only in inner stillness can we find the answers we seek outside. Only in emptiness is the true nature of things revealed, beyond forms and definitions. In emptiness, there are no judgments or expectations. There is no need to be better or to do more. There is only being. And that being, which is beyond the mind and beliefs, is what connects us to the deepest essence of life. Life is not measured by what we possess, nor by what we have achieved, but by our ability to enter the emptiness and accept all that is, without resistance or conditioning. The dance of emptiness is not an effort, it is a surrender. It is the art of flowing with the universe, without trying to control it. To dance with emptiness, we must learn to let go. Let go of the control we think we have over our lives. Let go of expectations about what should happen. Let go of the need for answers. Surrender to emptiness is surrender to life itself, in its purest, most original form. And it is in this act of surrender that we find our true strength. Strength comes not from struggle, but from surrender. It comes not from resistance, but from fluidity. Emptiness, then, is not something we should fear. It is the force that creates everything. Every time we allow ourselves to rest in emptiness, we are acknowledging our connection to creation itself. Every time we surrender to the unknown, we are opening ourselves to the limitless. And it is in that borderless space that we find the deepest freedom. Because in emptiness, there are no limits, no separations, no barriers. There is only the infinite possibility of being. The dance of the void is an invitation to live without fear, to live without the burdens of what we are not, to free ourselves from the expectations others have placed on us. It is an invitation to be who we truly are, without the masks we have put on to fit into a world that doesn't always understand the language of the soul. In the void, the soul speaks clearly, without embellishment or explanation, and its language is truth. Every time we enter the void, we experience a new creation, a new beginning, a new being. Because the void is not only the beginning of everything, but eternity itself. In it, everything is created, everything is destroyed, everything is transformed. There is no past or future, only the now, only being. And that being, moving to the rhythm of the universe, becomes the purest, most perfect dance. It's time to dance with emptiness, not as something foreign, but as a part of us. It's time to embrace the unknown, to surrender to mystery, to accept that life doesn't need to be controlled. It just needs to be lived, from stillness, from trust, from the heart. The dance of emptiness is the dance of freedom, the dance of the soul, and when we join it, we are one with everything. Chapter 18. The Light, Hidden in the Shadows. There are times when life seems plunged into darkness. The light seems distant, almost unattainable, and everything we know seems to fade into the fog of uncertainty. In these moments, we wonder, what has happened to the light? Why does it seem like the darkness has taken over? However, what we don't see is that the light has never left. It's there, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be revealed. Darkness is not the absence of light, but its necessary complement. At the bottom of every shadow, light hides, waiting to be awakened. Light and shadow are not enemies, but two sides of the same coin. Shadow is not something we should reject, but something we must understand, because within it lies the spark of light. Darkness is the refuge where light prepares to reveal itself, where it gathers before exploding into its purest form. We live in a world that tends to fear darkness, to flee from it, to reject it. We believe that light is what saves us, and that darkness is what condemns us. But if we stop to observe, we will see that the deepest secrets of existence are also found in the shadows. Light cannot exist without shadow, just as shadow has no reason to exist without light. The two complement each other, and both are necessary for us to understand the totality of being. It's easy to fall in love with light, with clarity, with evidence. Light illuminates the path, shows what's in front of us, allows us to see. But the shadow, the one that seems alien to us, is what allows us to look within. Without it, we would not be able to find the depths of our being, nor understand the darkest corners of our hearts. Light reveals what is outside, but shadow reveals what is within. When we face darkness, we should not fear it, but embrace it. Within it lies the opportunity to discover our own light, a light that does not depend on external circumstances, but on our ability to illuminate what is hidden within. Darkness is not an obstacle, but an opportunity to awaken something greater within us. It is in darkness that the soul has the opportunity to grow, to transform, to understand who we truly are. The moment we accept the shadows that inhabit us, we begin to understand the true meaning of light. Light is not something given to us from outside, but something born from within. It is a divine spark that dwells deep within our being, waiting for the right moment to manifest. Darkness is the space where that spark hides, where it prepares to burst forth in all its greatness. And when the light finally emerges, it is not just an external light, but an internal light that shines from our heart, from our soul. Every shadow we encounter on our path is a reflection of something we need to understand within ourselves. Shadows are neither bad nor good, they simply are. They are a reflection of our unresolved emotions, our limiting beliefs, our deepest doubts. But if we stop to look closely, we will see that in every shadow lies a truth. And it is this truth that allows us to grow, that allows us to find light in the midst of darkness. Light and shadow are destined to meet, to dance together in a constant back and forth. One cannot exist without the other, because they are two forces that complement each other. And it is in this balance between light and shadow that we find harmony, where we find peace. If only light existed, we would live in a flat reality, without depth, without mystery. And if only shadow existed, we would live in perpetual darkness, without hope. Life is a constant interplay between these two forces, a cosmic dance that invites us to find the balance between them. Every time we confront the shadows in our lives, we are being invited to discover something deeper within ourselves. Darkness is not the enemy, but the teacher that teaches us to see beyond appearances. It invites us to look within, to question our beliefs, to explore the deepest corners of our being. And it is on this inward journey that we find true light, a light that does not depend on external circumstances, but on our ability to see beyond the shadows. Life isn't always clear or easy to understand. Sometimes we find ourselves in the dark, not knowing where we're going. But even in those moments, the light never abandons us. The light is always present, waiting to be discovered, waiting for us to acknowledge it. And the moment we allow ourselves to accept the shadows, the moment we stop fearing the darkness, the light reveals itself in its brightest, purest form. It is in accepting our shadows that we find true freedom. Freedom lies not in escaping the darkness, but in embracing it, in understanding that it is part of us, that it is an integral part of our existence. By making peace with our shadows, we free ourselves from the need to control them, to eliminate them, to judge them. And in that freedom, we find the light that has always been there, waiting to be acknowledged. Light and shadow, like yin and yang, are forces that must not be separated. They are inseparable parts of creation, of life itself. And when we understand that both are necessary for our evolution, we begin to see the world with new eyes. We no longer see darkness as something to avoid, but as an opportunity to discover something deeper within ourselves. And we no longer see light as something external to be sought, but as something that has always been within us, waiting to be revealed. Thus, life invites us to see beyond what is shown on the surface. It invites us to look into the shadows, to discover the light hidden within. It invites us to embrace our humanity, with its lights and shadows, with its contradictions and its beauty. Because only in this full acceptance of who we are can we discover the deepest purpose of our existence: to be light, even when we face darkness. Thank you for reading this far. If this content on metaphysics and faith has made you reflect or opened new perspectives, don't stop now. In the first link in the description, you have access to much more material to continue growing, learning, and applying it in your life. See you in the next video, but remember, your transformation begins when you take action.